Pride and unbelief. As the Church of Jesus Christ, we must be on guard against the sin of pride and arrogance, which can lead us into a state of unbelief and hardness of heart. Here's Gene to explain.
This principle comes from what is called the Song of the Vineyard, here in Isaiah chapter 5. Look at it. I will sing about the one I love, a song about my loved one's vineyard. It's interesting, as you look at that, it's not quite clear if Isaiah is talking about this and singing, or if it's God singing about the one he loves, which could be an inference related to Jesus Christ, who is the Redeemer of the whole world, obviously, and appears even in the Old Testament as the angel of the Lord. I will sing about the one I love, a song about my loved one's vineyard. Now, no question about the vineyard. It's Israel. The one I love had a vineyard on a very fertile hill. And again, here's the metaphor. On the fertile hill could refer to the hills of Jerusalem. It could refer to the temple of the Lord on the temple there in Jerusalem. He broke up the soil. He cleared it of stones. He planted it with the finest vines. He built a tower in the middle of it and even dug out a wine press there. He expected it to yield good grapes, but it yielded worthless grapes. And here's a penetrating question that I think comes from God himself as he looks at the vineyard, as he looks at Israel. And here, of course, the vineyard is producing worthless grapes, which is a metaphor that describes the incredible sinfulness of Judah, and particularly those in Jerusalem. So here's the penetrating question. What more could I have done for my vineyard than I did? The fact of the matter is, he did a lot. But he's going to continue to reach out. And that, of course, is the story of the Bible, God reaching out in love with judgment to bring us back to the Lord. Why, when I expected a yield of good grapes, did it yield worthless grapes? The vineyard, of course, the house of Judah, the house of Israel, and it's a metaphor that describes exactly what happened there in Isaiah's day, but happened throughout the history of Israel. As a result of their sins, they experienced God's judgment. We read about that in verse 5. Now I will tell you what I'm about to do to my vineyard. I will remove its hedge, and it will be consumed. I will tear down its wall, and it will be trampled. Now it's interesting that Jesus picks up the parable of the vineyard, and it's recorded by Matthew. In Matthew chapter 21, beginning with verse 33. And let me just share that with you. Listen to another parable. This is Jesus talking. There was a man, a landowner, who planted a vineyard. So here we have the same metaphor that's being used as Isaiah used. Jesus is using it. He put a fence around it. He dug a wine press in it. He built a watchtower. It almost sounds like what Isaiah said. And obviously, in Jesus' mind, he's thinking of what Isaiah said, and he's paraphrasing. He leased it to tenant farmers and went away. And when the grape harvest drew near, he sent his slaves or his servants to the farmers to collect his fruit. But the farmers took his slaves, his servants, and he beat one. He killed another, and he stoned a third. Again, he sent other slaves, more than the first group, and they did the same to them. Now, the Pharisees are listening to this, the scribes and others, trying to figure out what in the world is he talking about. By the way, they should have made a connection here to what Isaiah said. If they were the scribes, if they were the Pharisees, the students of the law, people should have known what Isaiah wrote. But they were blinded. Finally, he sent his son to them. They will respect my son, he said. And of course, Jesus is speaking of himself. But when the tenant farmers saw the son, they said among themselves, "This is the heir. Come, let's kill him and take his inheritance." So they seized him, they threw him out of the vineyard and killed him. And therefore, when the owner of the vineyard comes, what will he do to those farmers? And of course, the people listening to this, they're literally thinking about this, but they don't get the picture that Jesus is talking about them. Because they condemn themselves in answering, they said, he will completely destroy those terrible men. And they don't see that they're the terrible men. And he will lease his vineyard to other farmers who will give him his produce at the harvest. And there, obviously, he's referring to the church, I think, the body of Jesus Christ. He came to his own received him not, but to those who believe, both Jew and Gentile, they could become sons of God. Now, as you look back at this, clearly, here's what the meaning is. The landowner is God. The vineyard, in this case, is Israel. The tenant farmer, they're the leaders probably in Israel, the ones who are listening. The slaves are servants. They're prophets, men like Isaiah, other Old Testament prophets. The Son is Jesus Christ. And ultimately, the Son came and they rejected the promised Messiah. They did not recognize him as the one that was prophesied centuries before in books like Isaiah. So here's a question for reflection and response. In what ways can the church avoid the same sins of pride and unbelief that plagued the nation of Israel? You see, the principle relates to this whole issue of arrogance, of pride. And Paul addressed this in Romans in a fascinating passage. I'll just share it with you briefly, but it's very powerful in understanding the Old and the New Testament. It's a warning against pride, Romans chapter 11. Now, if some of the branches were broken off, who are the branches there? It's the children of Israel. And you, through a wild olive branch, were grafted in among them and have come to share in the rich root of the cultivated olive tree. And there he's talking about Gentiles. Israel was broken off, many branches. We were grafted in to the true root. He goes on to say, do not brag that you're better than those branches. In other words, we're all subject to this temptation of pride. And as Gentiles, and Paul addressed this in his letters, don't be prideful because you're now children of God. You're grafted in. Be thankful. But he says, but if you do brag, you do not sustain the root, but the root sustains you. Israel is the root. And we're grafted in to that main branch. Then you will say, branches were broken off so that I might be grafted in. True enough, they were broken off by unbelief, but you stand by faith. Do not be arrogant, but be afraid, or be fearful. Fear the Lord. No room for pride or arrogance within the body of Jesus Christ, either by Jew or by Gentile. We're all one in Jesus, and we're all there by the mercy of God. Here's a specific statement that relates to the question as to how we can avoid the sin of pride. Paul addressed it when he says we're to follow Christ's example. Do nothing out of rivalry or conceit, but in humility consider others as more important than yourselves. What a powerful statement to the church of Jesus Christ. And Paul, of course, was dealing with the fact that there were Jews who were arrogant and thought they had a special position because they were believers in Jesus Christ. That's one of the issues in the book of Ephesians where Paul said, hey, those who are far away, that's us. Those who are near, that's Jews. The middle wall, broken down. No longer two, but one. So be humble. No room for arrogance. And so Paul continues, everyone should look out not only for his own interests, but also for the interests of others. Make your own attitude that of Christ Jesus. And earlier, of course, we looked at the passage that described the attitude of Jesus. Though he was in the form of God, he didn't cling to it. He came, took the form of a servant, became a man, humbled himself, went to the cross for us. And so we are to have the same attitude in relationship to God's mercy and grace and be thankful, not arrogant, but humble because of our wonderful position in Jesus Christ.